Welcome to the Atomic Impact Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Osborn. And on this podcast, we interview successful business owners for them to share atomic impactful lessons that they've learned throughout the course of their business and share them with us as well so we can all learn from it. As always, the show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way established businesses are creating a reliable acquisition channel of conversation with their ideal prospects. We use this method to book 26 qualified leads and sales calls in 10 days without any ad spend, outreach, endless social media posting, or any of the old traditional methods that just don't work anymore and everyone hates. To find out more, try message me on LinkedIn to have a chat. That's Jason A. Osborn on LinkedIn. The link to that will be in the show notes below. But on today's show, our special guest is Daniel Hayes. He's the owner as well as stakeholder in several different companies, Trent Rock Limited, UCR Group, Advanced Blast and Ballistic Systems, and Ambitious Air Mobility Group, where they are providing capital raising services, project and program management, product development, and commercialization. So, Daniel, welcome to the show today. And I want to start off with asking you a question that I always love to start off with, which is this. If you were somehow able to go back in time when you started your very first business, but knowing what you know now, what would you do differently in the first 12 months?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jason. And in fact, I'm going through this process exactly on a new startup. And the biggest lesson, I think you could label it as human factors. And I think the analogy to any human relationship is really powerful here. Typically, you're going to be starting a business or conducting business with another human. And when you're doing a startup, which is typically what I'm involved in, you're often doing it with co-founders.
Yeah.
And it's really important to have a solid foundation to which to build the business, but it's often overlooked. You often rush into product development. You often rush into raising capital. And some of these businesses don't necessarily have shareholders agreements early on. They definitely don't have founders agreements. And that's probably the biggest lesson I could impart at this time. If you're ever going to start a business and you're going to start it up with somebody else, it's to have a founders agreement. The final bit to say on this is just like all relationships, they can change. Just like all marriages, business relationships change as well. So the importance of that founders agreement is to put in place the mechanisms to address those changes. There could be overperformance by one, there could be a death or illness or sickness by one of the founders. How do you move forward with the least amount of friction? And it also puts in place a foundation for external investors to come in because you've got your ducks lined up. You understand if somebody creates some IP, who owns that IP? Is it the business or the individual? How is it assigned? If somebody leaves after 2 years and they've done a lot of work, but they've just got to depart from the business for other personal reasons, how is that accommodated? And so external shareholders really appreciate that fundamental foundation is put in place. So yes, address the human factors of who you're going to co-found with as if you are going into a marriage. And I think in the States, they're much more attuned to putting in place prenups. In the UK, it's something a bit not so norm in our culture. But in business, get it written down, get it agreed, and then you have less issues down the line.
Yeah, yeah. I think the analogy there between prenups is really good, but even outside of prenups, just having conversations in a relationship on a lot of factors. How is it going to work? What's going to happen if things change? What do we do? And I think that analogy is really important, bringing that into business, and I think being flexible, as you said as well, because things do happen, right? They change, and being able to be understanding of that fact, I think, is really really key, which is what I'm hearing you say a lot along that was as well. Well, as you've seen, because I know you work in different businesses and things, as businesses scale and grow, what's the hardest part for them scaling without falling into like spam traps? Because I see a lot of businesses as they grow, they're just desperately trying to bring in business and they begin to become really spammy oftentimes. What are some of the things that you've done to be able to avoid that?
Yes, unfortunately, my experiences haven't been necessarily in, say, the software or service business offerings, which clearly can fall into that chasing the revenues, changing monthly recurrent revenues, and all that kind of thing. I'm more
Mm,
focused on hard engineering and physical product side of things,
yeah.
and that comes with a whole range of challenges as well, often with humans at the center of it, and overconfidence, hyping, vaporware These are all very pertinent questions, and everyone wants to believe in the vision and everyone wants to believe in the business plan. But the litmus test, the reality is what is built today? What is,
Mm.
in my case, what is flying today? And so, yes, you have all these technology readiness levels from 0 up to 9, where you can prove your technology. But I think it gets exciting as you move from concept on paper, in CAD, in renders, into actually stuff that is meant to do what it's being built to do. So that physical manifestation is one of the most challenging parts because it links back to, again, human factors. When you start off on this, you have confidence. You want to believe in it. You have the exuberance. People call it
Mm.
charisma. I call it
Yeah.
risk now. Yeah, generally, and we can also label that as naivety. It's particularly in heavily certified industries like aerospace. And I put my hands up. I've learned the hard way. I've gone through that myself where, oh, let's build a flying car. To That's not going to happen
Yeah.
unless you've got hundreds of millions
Yeah.
behind you and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
do some sort of fundraising that gets you onto a market listing. But then you're chasing the hype. Every quarter, you've got to release data, you've got to release progress. And
Mm.
investors don't have well, they're very short memories and they don't have long horizons for ROI on it. So I guess a long-winded answer, which links back to the first question of human factors, is get something built, get it
Mm.
operating. And I think before you do that, you need to do that feasibility analysis of what you're intending to build. So there's no point building an aircraft that once it's then produced and into market, it's not going to be price competitive. So you need to do that early business analysis and feasibility study and then take the results in. And sometimes, we just don't have the ecosystem, we don't have the support, we don't have all the necessary capability in-house to be able to produce something at a realistic, pragmatic, feasible
Mm.
price that the end user will pay. And I think,
Yeah.
again, that gets missed by a lot of businesses. So the founders' agreements and then the feasibility on what you're trying to do, they're very much interlinked. And the transverse element of that is us as a human wanting to believe but having to go through that data, go through that exercise of proving that actually we are we are right, we're onto something here. At the same time, the other side of this coin is over analysis causes paralysis. So
Yeah.
JFDI, just get on with it. I won't say what the F is, but I think you can imagine what it is. But get on with
Yeah.
it, build something.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. One of the things I keep hearing you say around this, Daniel, is the human factor, the human factor, the human factor. And I love that because I think oftentimes businesses can forget that. And one of the other questions I love to ask around that is what's one of the things that you've changed in how you build relationships that makes selling what you do easier?
Yeah, so the main change is I do not introduce any capital or any business to any business unless I'm part of that business and I can put my reputation on the front door. So this is, you're not investing in some, I'm not brokering, I'm not in between anything. I'm part of the team, I'm representing it. I'm often putting my own capital in there, my own money where my mouth is.
Mm.
And the result of that is that I don't go to many people. I've got a very select group of people who are interested in what we're doing and they've had results in the past, which build confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. As you've grown, well, let me preface this question with this. Oftentimes, as business owners, we go through challenges. It's just part of it. It's one of those things, and it feels like the bigger we get, just the bigger the challenges become, and we get to learn how to fix those and learn above them and grow above them. Oftentimes people don't talk about it. They might be a little bit prideful, like I'm the only one going through this, it's my fault, or whatever. And so I like to kind of normalize the challenges around that because if we can just talk about them, just be open with them, then it's like, well, let's all learn together from them because we all deal with them. So having said that, what's the number one biggest challenge that you faced in your business so far, and what's the lesson that you learned from that?
So a bit like a marriage. it really, that relationship is so important. And if you get it wrong or it just changes, then it has medium to long term effects, and they take time to recover from. So it's very rare. I'm a 1974 vintage. Um, Only in the last 12 months do I remotely feel like I'm getting my act together. Um, and there's been some hard work done with a variety of different founders and different activities, and they haven't resulted in the dividend that you hope. I mean, it's
Mm,
called WD-40 for a reason, water displacement 40. It's not WD-1, it's 40. It's the 40th recipe that
yeah.
worked.
Yeah.
So I think you need to have a great supporting network. But to your point, what are the challenges is how do you recover from failure? Because failure is 90% of your journey on this type of thing. And actually, let's remove the word failure, but from what's the learning you take from it? What's the
Yeah.
experience? Often there is a beautiful hypothesis called the inconvenient theory, which is, you're driving down the road and there's a traffic light or a roadwork there, and it makes you stop and you're a bit frustrated because you need to get to an appointment. But if that light wasn't there, then down the road there would have been an HGV going across and you would have been involved in a fatal collision. There's all of these
Yeah.
inconveniences that come across. So your frame of mind is really important. And I think
Yeah.
my mental health is certainly, I'm naturally optimistic. I feel like I'm quite resilient now. I've got great support from my wife who understands what I'm doing. Other family members have no idea what I'm doing. It's literally, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and it can be quite a isolating experience when you're trying to do these things for the Japanese phrase ikigai. It's purpose and passion. Hopefully, you
Yeah.
get a bit of profit from there. It's but it and does it leave anything of substance? Will it materialize? It's not
Mm,
instantaneous. So that ability to absorb all of those learnings and carry on is something that if you don't have at the beginning, you certainly will have by the time you're my age. And yeah, you've got to retain your sense of humor. I think the Marines have that phrase, humor in the face of adversity makes a big difference. And everything for me is, I have faith that it will work out in the end. And that has
mm,
shifted. That has not always been the case, very driven. It's my way or the highway, or a bit more judgmental. Now I'm much more, let's see how that goes. And that allow me to let it go and let it just flow uh,
mm.
has been quite an interesting lesson as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That last bit you said there, I think, is one of the key things. I think if people will learn quicker, things just become easier. The whole thing of, well, let's just see how it goes. And I'm my vintage. I'm 1978, so I'm a few years younger than you, but not that much. And I think maybe just with age, we just kind of learn. It's like, okay, well, we've been through some really terrible stuff in our life before, and it's kind of worked out. So we kind of learn, I think, just from age, wisdom, experience. It's like, well, let's just see how it goes because we know that things will work out. There'll be lessons there, and usually it leads on as long as we're staying consistent and growth minded. It usually ends up working out, and oftentimes better than we could have thought, or realizing, as you said, the inconvenience there. You're just going, God, if that would have happened that way, that would have been terrible. And so we just don't know what we don't know. So I think there's a really deep learning there for a lot of people that feel anxious all the time, to try to just relax into it a little bit more, which, it's not always easy, but it's a great place to be in when you're able to get there. So yeah, I love that. I think that's a really, really cool thing. Well, over the next couple of years, what are you looking to achieve in your business? Let's say over the next 2 to 3 years, what are your goals?
So I'm really excited about UCR Group. It's a Southampton-based company that's focusing on novel advanced ceramic alloys, high entropy ceramic alloys, and they're produced in a low energy process. So we're
Mm,
producing materials here that can withstand hypersonic temperatures, gradient changes from outer space into orbit, and we're producing these in a process that uses very, very little energy. And that process itself is something that we're re-engineering, re-architecting the circuits. So it's a bit like a Kerr's energy recovery system for Formula One. So the process still has all the energy it needs, but we're
Mm,
not drawing so much from the wall. So we're capturing loads of inefficiencies, and we're using some
yeah.
specific architecture that's giving us some interesting results. And we've re-architected those for making solar panels more efficient. So on May the 16th last year, we did a side-by-side test between 100-watt panels with the circuits and one without. We had 2.5 times improvement from that. We've now
Wow.
taken that, and we're very grateful that the National Physics Laboratory, the NPL, the home of the kilogram, is now doing some independent verification on some of the aspects of that circuit topography. Because this one of the fallout IP of that is that we're able to introduce what's called synthetic inertia. So as you've got a grid system which has loads of different dynamic power generators, you've got wind, and that's generating depending on the wind power. You've got solar generating the brightness, and it all changes. So
Mm,
that's what I mean by dynamic. The load is
yeah.
not constant as it is from a coal-fired or a gas-fired station. It's dynamic.
Yeah.
So how does your grid cope with all the difference in oscillation? Well, typically you'll have mechanical inertia, and that'll be from the traditional generators who can absorb that.
Mm,
We have introduced a solid state synthetic inertia capability, a layer, which means that we can reduce the number of mismatches in frequency and oscillation. Therefore, you don't get the instantaneous explosions that you had in Portugal last year. You won't have the fires in the substations that you had in Hayes and Heathrow and stuff. And so that's one aspect that I'm very excited about. So to just
yeah.
try and reduce it into a couple of statements, in the UK, we have technology that can improve our generation capability. We have technology and materials that can improve the transmission and reduce losses. So actually, we don't need to be
Mm,
building much more power stations, even for AI.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that has a huge competitive advantage for UK PLC, because if our energy prices can be dramatically reduced, then our competitive nature improves as well. So
Yeah.
something like that sounds quite visionary and grand, and we start with the devices, we start with the solar panels, we start at subscale, we go into microgrids, we do it up, but that's in our process at the moment of commercialization. So I'm very
Yeah.
excited about
Very
that
cool.
because of the wider benefits that that has for UK and society in general.
Yeah, that's really, really cool, man. Well, yeah, best of luck with all of that. Sounds like you guys are doing some really cool things. Well, Daniel, for people that are wanting to get in touch with you and learn a little bit more about what you maybe just discussed there or anything else that you're doing in your businesses, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn seems to work for those unknown contacts. So yeah, that's the first port of call, and it's my name with my middle initial, Daniel C. Hayes. Just try that on LinkedIn. You should be able to see me.
Amazing, amazing. Well, I definitely recommend everyone checking out Daniel. And Daniel, thanks so much for taking out your time out of your day to be on the show today. Some really great bits of wisdom that you shared today. So thank you for so much for that and just being on the show again today. And just as a reminder for everyone listening, this show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way established businesses are creating a reliable acquisition channel of conversations with their ideal prospects that doesn't rely on any of the old, ineffective, traditional methods that everybody hates. To find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn to have a chat. That's Jason A. Osborn. The link to that will be in the show notes below. And until next episode, stay inspired.